Hey there, listeners of Dirty Linen and Over a Glass. It is Dani Valent with you, and I am here with Shanteh Wale for another episode of our occasional drinks chinwag called Dirty Glass. The glass is filthy today, Shanteh, is it not?
It's smeared. It's almost not see-through. It's gross.
So I love these chats. I think it's great for different podcasters across the network to get together and cross-pollinate. I do love a bit of that. And I think, in my work as a restaurant critic, I am always wondering if I am halfway decent at assessing the drinks offering of restaurants. It is something that I need to do as part of my work as a reviewer. But, I feel like I'm definitely a wine and cocktail enthusiast, but always feel like there is so much that I do not know about what is put in front of me. And as I was wrangling with this, always on a path to self-improvement, I thought, who better to chat to than you, Shanteh?
I mean, I can probably tell you off the bat that you would be very good at assessing a wine list, because I think it really comes down to probably a lot of what you do for assessing a restaurant in itself, looking for, what is appropriate? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? Who are they? And I think that if you kind of have that similar approach with a wine list, then you're off to a really good start.
Yeah. So here are some of, I suppose, my sort of baselines when I'm looking at a wine list. I suppose it's like, do I feel like it's bringing me in or shutting me out? Is if I sort of try to drill down, that's my first starting point. So is a wine list a forbidding encyclopedia? Well, actually, I shouldn't start it with forbidding, because an encyclopedic wine list can actually be pretty great if drinkers at all levels can be steered through it with perhaps annotations or a particularly helpful sommelier. Many pages does not mean feeling inadequate. But I suppose a short wine list can be both welcoming and obscure as well. If you just really don't know where to start or how to steer yourself through a short wine list, that can be, I suppose, a bit of an unwelcoming document. So, maybe size doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking about whether something draws you in or kind of closes you out is a great way to look at things, because I do think at the end of the day, you want to feel comfortable. And if someone does come over and pop down a 3,000-page wine list in front of anyone, including myself, I would have some quite visceral reactions to that. One of like, God, I don't want to be here for a week. And it would intimidate me, to be quite honest. So, but if there was a conversation around, we've got quite an extensive wine list, would you like to have a chat? Would you like to have a peruse through it? And then they dropped a 3,000-page wine list in front of me, that might be a bit different. So we often say that a short wine list amongst sommeliers is harder to do because you have less room to hide. You have to make short, sharp decisions about what you're going to do. And with all your favorite babies on there, you can't always have room for them. So I think a short list under 100 is a real challenge to do, something I've always kind of wanted to have a go at. But at the same time, a large list as well is about making the right decisions for the venue, for the food that you're offering, creating balance. But I'd probably say in some of those larger bin lists that you often inherit a wine list and with, an extensive cellar already. So some of those really large lists have been curated over years and many different people having a hand in it. So they are kind of probably harder to reinvent the wheel when you're coming into an institution that's been collecting wine for years. But perhaps a newer little restaurant might be able to kind of to start from scratch as well. But, I think it's, like you said, it's important to kind of think about some of the main features that you want to look at. So presentation is incredibly important. Suitability. Sustainability is also important, but suitability to the venue itself, quality, variety, pricing, all of these things are important to kind of tell the story. And that's what the drink list is supposed to be there to do. It just like the food is there. It's telling a story. It's creating an atmosphere and an environment. And the drinks list should really follow in that footstep of what the food is doing as well.
Yeah, I think suitability is really the key. So, I mean, all the other things are important, but if it doesn't fit with a restaurant, then I think it makes everybody feel a little bit on edge. So, where do you start with that? Like, let's say I'm opening a restaurant or I'm stepping in to manage a wine list. Where do I start with thinking about what's suitable?
I think, first of all, you really need to think about kind of what is the essence of the restaurant itself, what is the food offering, and who are our clientele. A list needs to be accessible to everybody, from somebody that doesn't know anything about drinks and is trying their first drink out at a restaurant, from someone who's well seasoned. So there needs to be something for everybody. I'd probably say presentation's probably your first point of view. How are we going to give this hard copy or soft copy perhaps of a list to somebody, and how are they going to read it? In the past, a lot of old school lists would kind of be with a content page and then go into perhaps by the glass and then into varietals. These days we see a lot more lists designed by style and kind of taste, which I really enjoy, because I think that it's a great way to say, okay, here's light and fresh and crisp, here's rich and textural, here's heavy and weighted. And it gives people kind of a place to go, just like kind of perhaps aperitifs and or entrees into main course kind of gives you an understanding or a kind of set of maybe assumptions where you can kind of enter into conversation. So, yeah, I think that that's probably a good way to start. What are we trying to offer here, and what is the basis of what we're doing? What are we doing differently, and what do we want the people to feel when they walk in the door? So, approachability is something that's really important that I think probably you need to start with. Maybe then moving on to presentation, but at the heart of that, it's got to be content too, obviously.
It makes me, you say you have to have something there for everybody. And some restaurants have, like with the food menu or the design of the restaurant, they definitely are trying to appeal to everybody. Any random group of people could walk in there and everyone will find something that pleases them. But then other restaurants aren't really going for that. They're like, we are this. And if you're coming here, you're having this sort of experience. I mean, and I think you do see that with wine lists as well, where it's like, no, we are a natural wine bar. And, if you're coming here to drink, you're on that journey with us. I mean, how much room do you think there is for wine lists to be very strident in that way?
I think it's all about how it's communicated. So a natural wine bar that wants to say we want to do things differently and this is our approach still needs to have wines that take people on a journey. So if you've said, I want to give this a go and I really don't know what the hell natural wine all is, but it sounds interesting, and then serving up someone like something that's super oxidative, maybe is like got a little bit of a spritz to it, might really throw someone off, and then their reaction is, God, that was awful. I don't ever want to do that again. So it still needs to have something that someone that's never tried a style like that, something that's approachable. So I think that there's definitely room for that. And to be honest, we want the spice of life. So we don't want to go in and have same old, same old. I used to say that about wine pairings. God, to do a wine pairing in a restaurant where you got sparkling Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot, Cabernet, and sweet wine was just so tedious, and I felt like I was going to fall asleep. So we don't want the same old, and I think style and character is fantastic, but I think it needs to be communicated in the right way so that people feel comfortable trusting the experience.
I mean, price is so important for diners and, of course, for restaurants. these are tricky financial times. One thing we're hearing a lot from restaurateurs is that people are just having a glass or two of wine. They're not shelling out for a whole bottle. And, you mentioned before about restaurants that carry a lot of stock, sometimes, over years. How do you sort of balance out that need for interest and perhaps depth with catering to customers who are more price sensitive than ever? But of course, you want to make some money as well.
Yeah, there's so many ways to do it, but it is tricky in the way that it's quite hard to have a conversation with somebody about stock that's been sitting around versus, the purchase price of when you first bought it, that it's sat and cellared well for, 10 years. And that's why perhaps the markup is perhaps a little more. And in these times, that's never been more prevalent. So I think that visibility is really important. And I think that people understanding that perhaps bigger wholesalers and retailers might be able to buy wine at a bulk cost and therefore offer wines by the bottle in retail stores for a very approachable price point. And that for a lot of restaurants, they actually pay usually the highest cost. They often aren't part of a massive restaurant group, and therefore they're paying the maximum cost that wine goes at, and therefore are not able to then pass on those savings. In saying that, there's lots of ways to do it these days in wines by the glass, offering different formats, having wines that change. So having, your by the glass, or having wines that are kind of changing more frequently. I think that also having conversations, and again, that can be sometimes hard because people don't want to have a sommelier present all the time. It can be quite intimidating. But I think just having a conversation and opening up, is this the only wine that you have available by the glass, or do you have something else along this line? That with more chat, that more people are able to understand a little bit more about what you're after, and then perhaps, be able to offer the right kind of choice and suggestion. For example, look, I really love Chardonnay, and I really like these buttery rich styles. I want something that's really oaked, but these prices from Margaret River are just insane. I can't afford to be drinking these wines, but that's the kind of style I like. And then perhaps someone could say, okay, well, I don't have a Chardonnay, but I do have a Timorasso from Italy. It goes into oak as well. It's got that kind of lovely orchard fruit flavors. It's a little bit richer. You're going to get these offerings, and it's a wine that's maybe half the price. So with more conversation, you usually get somewhere. But it is something that's on my mind as well. I think that trying to offer value is something that, as somebody that's writing a wine list, is always looking to do. How do I reward the customers for coming in and trusting me with them? Can I offer back vintages that I've been sitting on for a little bit and offer them at a decent price? I think it should be front and center of most people's minds when they're writing a list.
It's, you talk about someone who's able to recommend a Timorasso, if that was what it was. But I think, many people that are working on a restaurant floor these days wouldn't necessarily be able to, go to that level of detail. They are, they're very green and they're doing their best, but they're not wine experts by any means. What about wine lists that are written in such a way that step people through? I mean, you talked about the weight of, wine lists organised a little bit by weight, variety, style, food appropriateness. But what about more information on a wine list that gives you a bit of that, that somm insight, but in written form?
Yeah, I love that, because I think that for some people that aren't extroverts, that don't want to engage in conversation, just want to pick a wine, there's an availability for them to read the list and learn a little bit of something, and kind of without necessarily having to wait for someone to come over. And so I think that that's a really nice way to do things. I think it's great to allow a little bit more explanation about what to expect. And that's the biggest kind of risk, isn't it, when you go to have a bottle of wine that you can't taste beforehand? It's like, well, what if I don't like this? I can't send it back just because I don't like it. So it's about trying to use terminology that allows people to get an expectation of what they might be in for. And you're right, not everybody has a wine team to do that. So I think that if you're structuring, say, quite a small list into perhaps those kind of styles, or giving them fruity or sugar or sweet, it's giving somebody an indication already of perhaps what that final product might be like.
I always really respond to a narrative around a wine. And as much as talking about, the qualities of what's in the bottle, I love a little thing on a wine list that tells me about the winemaker, or some little vignette that just lets me latch onto it as more than just liquid in a glass.
When you see so many menus and lists, what kind of structure do you like when you have any kind of service? Would you like a wine list just dumped down in front of you? Would you like a conversation first about a pre-dinner drink? What's the kind of ideal structure for a beverage experience for you?
Well, I definitely think suitability is foremost. So I don't want to go to my local corner restaurant and be given a 50-page wine list. That just, I don't know, that's perplexing to me. Similarly, if I'm at, a trendy wine bar in the city and the wine list is, I don't know, perhaps it's just a one-pager or, a couple of pages, but they're all wines I've never really heard of, then I suppose I can assume that they're there for a reason, and that there will be enough expertise in the room to help me find my way through it. I suppose I don't know, welcoming is the word that comes to mind. It's the same with a food menu. I just want to feel that it welcomes me with its synthesis with the overall project of the restaurant, and that it enables me to experience a restaurant in a deeper and richer way, because this drinks list becomes part of the experience. So I can think about a recent experience I had at a really good neighbourhood bistro called Gauge, where the owner, Zeth Romano, is an absolute wine freak. And we walked in there was maybe 10 bottles of wine open on the counter, and he was flitting around the room, pouring a little bit of this here and a little bit of that there. And he read our table that we were interested in wine, and then got really excited about the project of, pouring us a little bit of this and a little bit of that to go with the different dishes we had. And he had a story to go with every bottle. I was up for that, and I found it really engaging. He kept, talking about how this, you wouldn't find this wine anywhere else but here, or, this is the only other place that's got this is Marion or something, some naming, a really well-regarded other wine bar. So I found that a really great experience. And I suppose I would trust that if I wasn't along for that ride and just wanted to have a quiet romantic dinner, that he would have left the table alone. So I suppose a lot of it's about reading the table and reading where you're at.
Totally. I think also, I was going to ask you, because I wonder if you kind of tend to agree, but I think very simple couple of things you can do when you kind of think about what's appropriate, like you were saying, what's suitable for the venue is, first of all, what is the style of cuisine and where does it have its roots embedded in, if it is fusion perhaps, and is there a nod to the wine of those, or the wines of those countries or regions? I think that's something. I mean, you don't want to have necessarily all of them, but if you're going to be serving specialties that are kind of based in Piedmontese cuisine, is there some wines that kind of are designed to be eaten with that cuisine? And then also, if you're Victorian based, is there a nod to Victorian local wines? If you're talking about your locality of produce, then are you also utilizing what's around you in terms of vines as well? I suppose that's two things that I would always just kind of maybe see if I could tick off the list. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if I'm at an Italian restaurant, I'll look for Italian varietals for sure, if not wines from Italy, but definitely it just feels cogent. And that's, I suppose, what you're looking for. I thought, Shanteh, it might be nice to just look at another wine list or talk about another restaurant's wine list in a bit of depth. And I picked out one from a restaurant I went to recently in Melbourne at Essendon Fields, which is a big commercial park. The restaurant is called Basq, Basq. And we'll put this wine list in the show notes so that you can look at it with us. So I'd say this is a restaurant that tries to do a lot of jobs for the community. There's a lot of local residents. There's a lot of people that come there to work and shop. It's a pretty, I suppose, it's trying to please all comers. The menu's a bit Euro. It's mostly Euro. It's pretty middle of the road. They do a steak night. There's some seafood pasta. There are great desserts. Like, it's well executed, but the menu plays it pretty safe. That's just the market that they're in. So the wine list is pretty tight. There are, what are they, like about half a dozen sparklings, whites, a couple of rosés, 6 or 8 reds, a couple of dessert wines, and then there's a little premium list and a Penfolds collection. So on the other side, there's maybe 15 cocktails, a few non-alcoholic cocktails, which is great, and some beers, half a dozen beers, including a 0 alcohol one, which is excellent. So what do you reckon?
You said it's kind of steak base. Where's the name come from? BASQ.
Well, so I think it's the guy that's running it has attended for it, but I think the name may have predated him taking it on. So Basque tends to suggest, the Basque region of like northern Spain and that southwestern part of France. There is nothing Basque about the menu. Don't go there. Their promo material talks about Northern California. Like, actually, don't go there either. Just think about it's like a really honest, it's an honest suburban restaurant that does a great job. So there's, they've got a Caesar salad, but they've got a Thai beef salad. They've got a charcuterie board. They've got a burrata, because actually it's illegal to open a restaurant without burrata in Melbourne at the moment.
Seems like it.
There's some slow cooked lamb shoulder. There's some, there's a chicken breast, which is, I think, which chef wants to cook a chicken breast, but that's what the customers want. So it's and there's a few steaks. So it's
okay, cool. Well, that's cool because, first of all, it just makes me think of the places I've lived and the little haunts, just like you've said, that it's just there. It's always available to you. There's always a couple of things you crave from its list, and you're happy to go there, and you know exactly kind of what to expect. And I absolutely love that. I think they've done a good job of the list. It certainly, in terms of kind of price point and kind of what they're offering, they've made some really clever little decisions. I love the fact that you've got, first of all, 2 sparklings by the glass, and I kind of got a bit more of an Italian northern Spain kind of feel already from some of the wines on there. But I think 2 sparklings is pretty awesome. It certainly nods to Australia where we are, and then also gives you something totally different with a little Prosecco by the glass as well. Both really affordable, with the Australian sparkling $9 and then the Prosecco for $11. So you've got something that's probably going to be traditional method cuvee from South Australia, maybe with a little bit of Lee's work. So, and then it would be lovely and fruity, maybe a bit of those kind of tertiary characters. And then you've got a Prosecco, which is like pears and apples in abundance, full of dewdrops and beautiful crunchy fruit, and maybe with a little bit more sugar to round it out. That's something really easy drinking. So I think that's really great to have 2 sparklings on a small list like that. available by the glass already. You've got some champagne there. Who doesn't, it's sad when you walk into somewhere and they don't have a champagne for when you really want to splash out. So you've got like a few different options there, which is pretty cool. And then if I even just look at the, like, say the whites by the glass. So you've got a Pinot Grigio here for $13. You've got a Sauvignon Blanc, a Roussanne, and a Chardonnay. So if I think about 4 different white wines to offer different people, you've got something like Pinot Grigio, which is really crunchy and fresh and zesty and easy drinking. Then you've got something like a Sauvignon Blanc, which we know is going to be tropical and fruity and like punch you in the face with aromatics straight out of the glass, straight from Marlborough. And then you've got a textural wine and something with a little bit of oak as well. So you've got the Roussanne from the Barossa, which is going to be, like we said, a little bit more orchard fruits, perhaps a little bit more kind of the lemon meringue pie elements. And then the Gippsland Chardonnay, which is going to have a little bit more oak, a little bit richer and fuller. So anything that you're eating in terms of going from maybe like a Caesar salad all the way through to maybe like a pasta dish, roast chicken, you've got something there that would work kind of from main course all the way through to almost dessert-like. So I think that, they've covered all their bases there. They are all interesting varieties. There's also classic examples all the way to something like Roussanne, which we don't see very often, but is an amazing food wine. So 4 really good decisions on By the Glass.
The other thing I like about this list is that they do have like 5 or 6 words about each wine. To steer you through. It's a dining room where you might not have someone at your table who can speak much to wine. For example, they've got for the Sauvignon Blanc, they say floral and fresh. For the Chardonnay, clean, smooth, and slightly oaked. So if you like your oaky Chardonnay, you can steer yourself straight there.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's just it gives you everything, but in short, succinct elements, which is hard to do, but also makes a lot of sense when you're like, what am I in the mood for? And if some of those words don't make sense, you can say, yep, guava, floral, and fresh. That sounds like me. That's delicious. And in a similar way that they've done that in terms of cocktails as well, right? We see that there's the ingredients, but a lot of the times cocktails are described as like in a highball with lots of ice and really, lots of zingy flavors or whatever it may be. So I think it's interesting that they've got the Penfolds collection, and that probably says a little bit about some of the original owners or how it's been passed down that maybe would have collected Penfolds. Their premium wines are all red, which is kind of interesting, saying they've got some nice steaks on their menus as well. But for somebody that wants something special, often little places like this become, like you said, your regular place, and you'll go there with your partner or with a really good friend and meet up there, and they can mean quite a lot to people. And so I think that having some special bottles when you want to splash out is really nice. There isn't vintages on some of those premium wines, so that's interesting. It might just be a conversation that you then need to talk to someone about. But I think it's a pretty succinct little list. It seems quite modern. And there's a good variety in terms of having newer winemakers like Tarrawanna Estate in their Pinots to some beautiful flavorly Bourgogne Pinot Noir or Burgundy as well from a huge estate. So, yeah, I think it's cool. And I kind of am curious. I wouldn't mind going there for a drink and something to eat.
That's great. They would love to hear that. I mean, you're right. Like, there are only vintages on the Penfolds. Nothing else has a vintage on it. I mean, is that a red flag for you, or is that just, a prompt for a further conversation?
Yeah, I think that with a lot of places like this, they tend to turn over, and if they love the wine and it's reliable, they'll probably say, yeah, we've had a vintage change and we're going to move on to the next vintage, and we might keep it on for, say, 3 different vintages. I think that that's okay. These days, I was at Shell House recently and enjoying the fact that they use a little bit of liquid paper or a little sticker to go over across the wine that's no longer in stock. And it just makes me think about the copious amount of reprinting of wine lists when wine was out of stock. So I think that this is this is appropriate for this kind of restaurant to say no. I'm sure if you ask the vintage, they might even sometimes have two, and that's even better because they'll say, oh, we've got the 2018 Hugo Gentil, but we've actually got a 2015, and then for the wine snob in you that goes, oh, a little back vintage, it's at the same price, you can often get a good steal.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And if for people who aren't looking at the list, we should say like the by the bottle, like the whites sort of sit mostly around $60, and the reds sort of range from 55 to 110 before, and then the premiums are a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of time there's a focus for people when they go in at the least expensive wine on and the most expensive wine, but I'm always looking in the kind of mid range and seeing what interesting wine can you offer for around $110 mark. For me, that is if I'm in a fine dining restaurant or I'm in, a little neighborhood restaurant, I think that's a kind of nice little number to see how much variety you can get in that area.
Oh, I like that a lot. So where shall we round this chat off, Shanteh? Are there any wines that you could put on a list that make you seem like you really have it all together? Like the ones that, I don't know, sommeliers will walk in and go, oh, these people know what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it comes down to rarity. So I think it comes down to wines. Often wines that are in hot demand, you have to have a really good relationship with the distributor and have it over a course of years to be able to access some of those wines. You can't be flippant and treat them like crap, decide to buy one vintage one year and then the next year turn around and go, oh, can I get like every single vintage of whatever you got on release? So I think the wines like Ganavad and things from the Jura that it takes a long time to develop a good relationship with the people that bring in those wines and care so much about them. If you've got them on your list, you know that the culture behind wine buying and the relationships is really well looked after. Therefore, that's why they get those wines. So, and that can be hard too for smaller restaurants that perhaps don't have the buying power to get all of those wines. Some of the most highly sought after wines, you actually have to buy a lot of their other releases before you get that top wine, and not everywhere can afford to do that. But I think they're the wines that kind of people are impressed by because they go, oh yeah, they've got a bit of back vintage. They've been buying those wines for a while. But no, I think don't have that approach. Go for wines that suit what you're trying to do, that over-deliver. At the end of the day, if you've got a wine which you keep on by the glass and people keep ordering it because they love it, then you're really making people happy. And therefore, that's kind of the approach I would take, is give wines that every time someone orders one, they're really raving about it, and then you're probably doing a pretty good job.
Love it. And is there a wine that's crossed your desk recently that you reckon we should know about?
Oh, gosh, so many. Gosh, what would I say? Well, I actually had some cool little wines from Margaret River, and I hadn't tasted these recently. I love Margs, and I think they do beautiful wines, but I did have some Chardonnay from Hutton Reserve or Hutton Estate, who are quite a small little winery, and I was pretty in awe of their Chardonnays. I mean, Margs does great Chardonnays, but these really had this other level of kind of minerality and salt spray that I particularly like. And it's one of those wines where I was like, gosh, this is pretty good, but I drank it over about 3 or 4 nights and it kept getting better. And that is always a mark of really good quality, when the wine just keeps giving. So, Hutton Estate from Margaret River.
Love it.
Dani, what have you been eating lately that's excited you? As somebody that I need to live vicariously through you, what is on the menu lately that's just knocking your socks off?
Well, I was lucky enough to have lunch recently at Stoke House in St Kilda, overlooking Port Phillip Bay. I don't think it matters what the weather is. It is always a treat to be there. And I don't think you can go to Stoke House without having the seafood platter. It's always different. It's always amazing. And it's a real showcase of whatever's best from around the country. So it was just, just gorgeous, like some amazing scallops, a beautiful mussel, a little bit of red mackerel. Is that right? Or maybe it was something else. Anyway, it doesn't matter what was on it because it'll be different when you go there. But whatever it is, it's just beautifully presented, and it's just a great experience. Just a true example of respect for produce and just let shine to its best advantage. Absolutely love it.
I think there's something about picking your way slowly through, like you said, a big seafood bonanza when it's not the old school, like everything is fried. And like you said, everything's just cooked perfectly and you can just enjoy the taste of pippies or, and just sit there with, I hope you were drinking something nice with it and just relaxing and just admiring how, like you said, with a view like that, looking out at just the gorgeous ocean and then amazing produce like that. We've got to just count ourselves lucky living in this incredible country, don't we?
Absolutely. I felt so lucky, and I was drinking something really nice. But the reason that I needed to have this conversation is that, as per usual, I can't remember what it was.
I can. I think because I saw a photo. I think you were drinking a Ripon, so New Zealand. I think it was a Riesling based off the shape of the bottle, and I think you were drinking a Willamette Chardonnay by Ben Rankin in the Macedon Ranges. Two awesome wines, and that is literally off the top of my head from seeing that one post.
Well, shout out to the head som there, Will Martin, who does an amazing job with the list, and just explaining the wine in the moment. For those who have good recall of these things, they can apparently remember them even when they weren't there. For the rest of us, we just know that we loved it. Shanteh, always so good to catch up with you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I feel like this chat has been super useful for me in assessing wine lists along with my eating adventures. But hopefully really useful for people out there who are considering how to create a great wine list for their own restaurant.
Love it. It's so lovely to chat to you, Dani. And like I said, keep on doing what you're doing so we can all live in the hopes that one day we'll do the same.
Thanks, Shanteh.
See you later. Cheers to you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.